Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the green room and sharing a little bit about your guys' journey with Ampaire. Obviously, coming off of a huge acquisition and continuing to push electric aviation forward. And we've had a couple of conversations now, so I'm going to let you explain a little bit more about Ampere, and then we can dive into the real juicy bits about your ideas around aviation and how we're going to get to a fully decarbonized industry at one point in the near future,
Amazing.
and how you guys are helping
Well,
contribute there.
thanks.
So, would love to hear a little bit about your
Yeah,
background.
thanks for having me. Great to be chatting with you again. My background, trained as a mechanical engineer out of Caltech, worked on some exciting technologies at big aerospace companies. 5 years ago, co-founded Ampaire with this big vision for what could electric vehicle technology mean to aviation, right? How can we solve some of those really big problems that are the hard ones to solve? The emissions impact on the environment, the noise impact on communities, some of the economic challenges that airlines face. These are hard problems that over decades have, airlines have struggled to solve them and make incremental progress. Well, we see electrification as this opportunity to have transformational progress, right? We look at this as, we call it the third revolution in air travel, where you've got the first is the dawn of powered flight over 100 years ago. Then halfway between then and now, you had the jet age, right? New propulsion technology driving new aircraft types, driving new capabilities, economics, business models. And here we are again, a new propulsion technology, this time electric, driving that change, driving the innovation, and driving folks like me and my team to start companies to see this thing through. So a really exciting time in the industry.
Awesome. And what does Ampere do specifically in your own
So
words?
at Ampaire, our mission is to be the world's most trusted developer of practical, compelling electrified aircraft. And so when you tease that apart, electric planes, right? It's taking the EV technologies and implementing them into the planes that fly. Now, going into the trusted, practical, compelling portions of our mission, we're taking a very pragmatic approach here, right? One where we're actually upgrading existing airplane types with the electric vehicle technology. So rather than inventing a clean sheet plane, which is a very long, very expensive, very challenging process, we're beginning with the known and tried and true and trusted planes that are already operated by these customers and upgrading them, kind of like that original Tesla Roadster, upgrading them to an electric
Hmm.
vehicle system. Similar on that practical approach, rather than starting with fully electric, which is definitely the long-term vision and brings the best benefits, much like a Toyota Prius started as kind of the first mass market compelling product for ground transportation, we think that hybrid electric is the right place to start for aircraft. So you put all those pieces together, Ampaire is upgrading existing planes with hybrid electric technologies for practical and compelling purposes, and we're doing that today. In fact, we just passed our 2-year anniversary from our first flight, which was the world's largest hybrid electric plane, flew in early 2019. We've upgraded it. Last year, we deployed it out to, to airline routes in Hawaii, world's first. So, doing some really exciting and
Really?
meaningful things as this electrification company.
Really? So that was carrying passengers that were actually looking to fly over to
So
Hawaii.
these were island hopping routes on Hawaii. So not
Okay.
from California or Seattle over to Hawaii. But
Okay.
the airline, Mokulele Airlines, that operates between the islands, you get a ticket, you fly in a 9 passenger plane, and that's usually what you would do, right? And they fly sometimes what are called essential air service routes as well, kind of a lifeline route to communities that need air service. So what we do was we took one of our planes, which is in an experimental market survey category, which means that we were able to have the
Okay.
airline pilots fly it. We were able to take not ticketed passengers, so it's not revenue generating, but kind of pilot project type passengers, and then fly on this route. And the real key thing was it was a daily operation, just like the airline would have done, where we'd do 2 round trip flights per day. So pretty high utilization, much higher than at least what we're aware of anybody else in the industry doing. And you when you try to do things that are more real, right? Like deploying a plane on multiple times per day, you have to take seriously all of the challenges in the broader ecosystem that maybe if you were in some secluded flight test range flying once a day and you would have a very different experience. So learned a lot in that one, and super exciting achievement for the team.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good way to follow up on this episode. Maybe get on an actual flight in the future. But I think what's so fascinating about what you guys are working on over at Ampere is that you're taking a approach to decarbonization of electric air travel by starting with smaller planes and shorter range air travel, which seems kind of contrarian to what you traditionally hear from an outsider who's not working in the space. The typical conversation around decarbonization efforts is, can we use renewable natural gas or biogas to power our big 747s, or maybe even hydrogen? Is that going to be the future of decarbonized air travel? But you guys have been taking a look at it saying, well, what's the next step? And by focusing on this niche of smaller, shorter range aircrafts and using batteries, it really begs the question of, what did you see and your co-founders see that led you to believe that that's the right way to approach this when we're thinking about a broader decarbonization effort across the entire aviation industry?
Yeah, I mean, it always goes kind of back to the mission, which is at the core, the heart of the company. So trusted, practical, and compelling. We're trying to find really pragmatic ways to bring positive impact to the world in a rapid timeline. And while I actually believe that this is a going to be a portfolio of solutions where sustainable aviation fuels and a number of the options that you mentioned very well might make it to market, the simple reality is that you're not going to jumpstart the industry and the market by electrifying a 737. Right? That's just the technology, the regulations, the challenges, the cost. It's not the practical place to start. And so this is where the conversations we had. We founded the company and have this North Star vision of vertical takeoff and landing, supersonic, fully electric jets, right? And that is so cool. And that's definitely someday, if it becomes possible, we want to be the kind of company that can develop the underlying technology that enables it. But we are very pragmatic in our approach and in how we think through it. And so the question was, well, what do we need? Do we need to be able to fly supersonic initially? Not really. That's not the core requirement. Do we need to be able to take off and land vertically from your driveway? It's nice. It's a great vision, and a lot of people are working on it, but like it's not necessary initially. And then even, do we need to design a brand new airplane, or can we do something that's meaningful enough with the, $1 trillion of assets in these airplanes that already are out in the market? And the answer is yes, we can actually do that upgrade. And so it's about kind of peeling away the layers, understanding what the true requirement is, and then, when this is really important, checking with the customers to see if they care, right? Because it's one thing to be a technologist with a great idea, and of course, everybody wants to buy it. But what was really important is very soon after founding the company, we went directly to the airlines and asked and talked to them and listened to them and understood what do they actually need. And you don't want to be, there's Henry Ford saying they would have asked for a faster horse, and sure, you have to watch out for when they ask for something that's too narrow-minded or myopic. But when you really focus in on the customers, their needs, you kind of read between the lines there. It enables you to maybe take a more pragmatic approach and still bring a meaningful product to market. And so that was really where the insights came from.
And what was that problem that led you guys to decide that, hey, converting small electric aircrafts, because traditionally when we think about it, or if I go through a first principles thought, I'm like, well, batteries are
Mm-hmm.
heavy and planes need to be light, otherwise they can't carry heavy loads. So when that conversation with the customers happened, what was the core problem you guys discovered? And then what was the innovation on your guys' side that led to that actually turning into the product that is Ampere today?
Yeah, well, you hit spot on. Electric vehicle technology is great, but batteries are relatively heavy compared to, especially to fuel. And so airplanes need to be light in order to fly, and we're especially when you're working with existing airplanes, that means you're within the constraints of how heavy they can be. And really, then you end up trading system weight versus useful payload. Useful payload's how you get revenue, right? So this is
Right.
the key trade. And so it's working within, of course, having realistic projections for where battery technology will be. This is part of the reason why we decided that hybrid electric is going to have an enduring position in this industry, that enables longer range, higher payload usefulness of the planes. And then the last part is, again, looking at the evolution of the technology, the industry, the regulations, the customer adoption, public readiness. It makes sense to begin in this corner of the market, smaller planes, um, and kind of prove its safety, prove its usefulness, prove the value propositions, and then scale from there. And that's really where we made those decisions, given those limitations and challenges, and are in the process of proving, and eventually we'll scale it out to the rest of the industry.
So I guess that leads me to my next question because, obviously you've been now in the space for well over close to half a decade, well
Yeah,
over half a
yeah, yeah.
decade now, and been building hybrid electric planes, obviously as a transitional technology here towards true 100% decarbonization in the aviation industry. What is that one market trend or that macro trend you're seeing in this industry that most investors, founders, and onlookers who are mostly looking at aviation passionately as opposed to actually working on the day to day? What are those insights or trends that you're seeing that get you really excited about what's coming down the pipeline when it comes to maybe fully electric planes or hydrogen powered planes or more hybrid electric solutions? Because I imagine just hybrids alone in vehicles can have significant decarbonization
Mhm.
impact. And I imagine it's the same with aviation as
It
well.
certainly is. I think the one of the most exciting nuances here that the average person probably wouldn't realize is, in most cases, it seems, people assume that a sustainable solution costs a premium. That, oh, you want to get your electric or hybrid electric car, well, you'll have to pay 50% more, or your total cost of ownership will go up, or you're going to pay the green premium for that low carbon solution in other infrastructure. And the exciting thing about electrified aviation is that the total cost of ownership for a hybrid electric, and especially for a fully electric plane, the total cost of ownership is significantly lower than if you were to have that same utility of a plane combustion. And it's because the combustion engines have such significant maintenance and such significant and expensive fuel burn that the regular overhauls of those engines and the heavy fuel burn that they have, um, far outweighs the cost of operation of the much simpler, lower maintenance electric vehicle systems, even when taking into account battery pack replacements. And with the cost of electricity, even when you're taking into the risk of having to deal with some demand charges, you're still saving significant money on those operating costs. And now that is a value
Really?
proposition that most people don't recognize and wouldn't think initially. But we're not here to sell a premium product. We're here to sell a sustainable product that has a strong economic value proposition. And as soon as people realize that, then it's not that we're like pushing green tech onto the aviation industry. They're actually going to be jumping onto this technology because of the economics as well as because of the sustainability. And that means it's going to be an enduring solution that'll ultimately win out in the markets.
I mean, it's kind of like what Tesla did with the Roadster, kind of looping back to the beginning of the conversation, where they built a sexy looking sports car that went 0 to 60 really quick. And that's what people were buying for, and just happened to be electric. And as their technology matured, they were able to push further. I had no idea that actually a hybrid electric solution or an electric aircraft would actually cost significantly less on the maintenance side because, well, I guess the engines are going to be smaller, right? The an electric drivetrain is probably going to be significantly easier to maintain over
Hmm.
time, and battery pack replacements are probably easier than repairing a full engine in an aircraft. So now you've kind of simplified the entire drive. I wonder, do you actually reduce the weight of an overall plane then by switching to hybrid electric, or is there a weight gain there?
Generally, so remember, weight is whether it's the system weight or the payload, right? So we try to not eat into the
Sure.
payload capability of the plane. If you were able
Ah,
to carry,
okay.
let's call it 10 people on a plane previously, we don't want to cut out 1,000 pounds and have you only down to or sorry, down to 5 people. Um, but there are
Got it.
customers who don't need, a full set of seats, and in that case, we could put more batteries, really is what it would come down to, which gives you a more electric solution. And the more electric you are, the lower the operating cost overall. And so it's kind of a virtuous cycle. But it's always that balance between, useful revenue generating payload and system weight. And so we generally are not going to be lighter weight, because if we could be lighter weight, we would fill up all that extra weight with more batteries. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay, so it really comes down to the use cases of the end owner of that plane, what they're looking to achieve with it.
And very
So it
generally, like,
makes
because we're not going to build a custom plane for each individual owner, right? And so
sure,
it's about modeling the
sure.
market and finding, what are the segments, and then delivering products that meet the needs of each of those segments. So good example is the launch products are going to be, again, like a Prius, a hybrid electric where you don't need to plug in. Now that's really interesting. I mean, but a
Mm,
Prius also wasn't saving, all of it saved some of the fuel, right? 20, 25%. And
right.
that's a good start. Now, in a different architecture of hybrid, you could save 30 to 50% of the fuel, or fully electric, you'll cut out all the fuel and maybe have a 70 to 90% fuel cost savings when you're just comparing electricity. And so there are, subsequent steps for groups within the market where those alternate architectures will come out. But, there are some launch customers who really, the infrastructure is not going to be there for them to charge the planes. So we want the planes to be able to fly infrastructure independent, like the Prius.
And I think that's what makes this such a fascinating approach that you guys have attacked because we're now looking at a real deep focus into what's the next logical step for these plane owners and operators to actually take because if you told me hey let's get onto a all electric plane I'd still have a little bit of
Hmm.
hesitancy even though you've flown as much as you guys have, but if you tell me it's hybrid I have a little bit more confidence in the actual system because I'm like, well, I know the engine's not going to fail on me and I know they have fuel there, so let's give it a shot. This could be an
Hmm.
interesting experience. And it's almost like a really interesting user experience case study in that
Yeah, and
nature.
it
So I
bridges.
guess that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
go
yeah, I
ahead.
think it
Yeah.
is. It is. You pointed out a good bridge in, like, people's their willingness to adopt the technology. Now we actually believe that the fully electric system is ultimately going to be more reliable, driving a higher level of safety of flight, for example, than the combustion baseline. But with that said, there's still a lot to be proven, right? And people, and I've heard
Right.
it quite a few times, people feel comfortable with technology that they know. And the hybrid step feels more comfortable to a lot of people than the step to fully electric. Even though fully electric, I believe will be readily adopted eventually.
and I'm sure there needs to be active conversation with like the FAA regarding regulation for an all electric aircraft and far more safety checks because I can't imagine that anyone's really fully prepared for all electric planes moving people and payloads from point A to point B. Is that also a really strong reason why you've seen heavy adoption in hybrid electric kind of conversion so far?
Well, you're right that actually, there's no one delivering a commercially viable electric airplane yet. Now there are personal electric airplanes out there. There's a two-seater that's being sold out of Europe, a
Okay.
light sport aircraft. And if you wanted to fly for 45 minutes around an airport and land, maybe even do like a flight training mission, you can actually do that today. And so there are people who are selling and buying those types of planes. Now, the regulatory bodies, you're right, are not yet, only that one group has really walked through the pathway. There are a lot of companies, a handful at least, who are very seriously, like Ampaire, working with the regulators to bring safe products to market. And so those conversations on, is the hybrid electric system, how does that balance in kind of all the safety considerations versus a fully electric system? And of course, of course, the regulators, their job is to make sure that all these vehicles, once they're out in the public eye, are unquestionably safe.
Got it. So I guess the one thing I really am curious about that I like asking every guest that comes on here, if you had to give a piece of advice to other investors or even founders early on in their own clean tech journey, even if they're not in electric aviation or the airline industry in general, what's that one thing you wish you knew 6 years ago when you were starting Ampaire and putting the screwing the first bolts in to convert airlines? What's that thing you wish you knew that you think could really benefit someone else that's just trying to get started, be it with a hardware solution or even a software product in the clean tech space?
Yeah, I mean, what I would recommend is really define your mission personally and as a company, and know that just have it clearly understood from the very beginning. Check on it on occasion. It was a few years actually before we codified ours and really fine-tuned that. And what I've found is that when an organization has a very clear mission from the top of the company all the way through every contributor, knows it, believes it, dreams it when they're sleeping, that builds a level of consistency, a level of resiliency, especially through the hard times. And that if you're getting started on something, it's knowing why you're there and what you're setting out to achieve. In ours, it talks about the impact that we're trying to create, the positive impact in the world, about the approach, how we're going about it. And I think these are the guiding factors that motivate and align a team. And we luckily we did it early, but I would have been happy to do it even 2 years before then. And so I'd highly recommend, it's a generalizable to any endeavor. Set the mission and then take it from there.
Awesome. So is Ampaire hiring, or if people wanted to stay in touch with Ampaire, even post acquisition now, how can they continue to follow the journey of your guys' rocket ship in decarbonizing electric or decarbonizing aviation as an industry and leaving your guys' mark in this entire world, really? So if people wanted to stay in touch with you guys, follow you, or reach out, how would be the best way
So we
possible?
are absolutely hiring aggressively. And so go to
Awesome.
ampere.com/careers, and many of the jobs are listed there. More jobs will be coming out. We're trying to keep it to kind of the core immediate positions, but check regularly for something that looks like it aligns. If you're deeply passionate about this, send an email to talent@ampere.com, and include your resume and what kind of position you think you'd be great for and why you're so passionate about working at a company like Ampaire. Would be happy to consider you. Um, follow us on
Awesome.
social media. Just search Ampaire, or you can Google Ampaire electric aircraft, and I'm sure you'll be able to find all of those items. And yes, please reach out, and if you know anybody as well who might be interested, feel free to send our information over to them too.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, I'm going to let you get back to your day so that you can get more electric planes out there into the world. And I appreciate you coming on the green
Hey, my
room.
pleasure. Thanks for having me.